Dear friends, in the last class we have discussed about fundamental rights movement during Indian freedom struggle. In continuation of this class, let's see today's topic, civil and political rights movement. Indeed, human rights jurisprudence took shape during British rule in India as a result of harsh repressive measures of the British rule. Their attitude towards the people of India encouraged to fight for civil liberties and the demands for constitutional guarantees of some fundamental rights. Several national organizations, including that of Indian National Congress, in the beginning was only to protect and secure civil liberties and the human rights of non-discrimination on the grounds of race, color, etc. The freedom movement was largely directed against racial discrimination and to secure basic human rights of the people, which are mostly within the paradigm of civil and political rights. Indians felt that their inalienable rights had been ignored, denied and trampled for the sake of colonial rule. Indian leaders like Raja Ram Mohan Roy started to internalize the political arguments of freedom. Gandhiji's expositions of the equality amongst people and the non-violent protests was significant contribution not only to civil and the political rights movement in India, but also to the humankind as a whole. It was witnessed that as a result of Gandhiji's efforts, the age of racial discrimination came to an end in many parts of the world. The first one, civil and the political rights. Civil and the political rights are those conditions in the absence of which a person cannot enjoy a decent life. They are indispensable conditions for civilized existence and are justiciable that most of such rights are included in the fundamental or basic rights and recognized by the law of the land. In most states, they are embodied in a constitutional document. Like and almost every modern state has elaborate machinery for safeguarding the civil rights of its citizens against encroachment by the individuals or government. Civil and the political rights, however, include right to life, right to freedom of expression, movement, personal security, association, property, right to religion and the conscience, right to family, right to take part in government, right to profession, etc. These rights provide the basis for fulfillment of basic conditions of the social life. We can say that Part 3 of the Indian Constitution is the resemblance of these rights. Civil and the political rights are familiar from historic bills of rights such as the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen 1789 and the US Bill of Rights 1791, but most importantly Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948. Factors influencing in civil and the political rights. Western education system has great impact on freedom struggle. By getting advanced knowledge, Indians quickly became aware of their due rights and ultimately sought self-rule, where all the citizens have to enjoy freedom, including civil and political rights. When the British ruled in India, resistance to foreign rule was manifested in the form of demand for fundamental freedom, civil and political rights of the people. During colonial rule, Indians were humiliated and discriminated in many ways in their own motherland. British resorted to arbitrary acts such as brutal assaults on unarmed strikers, internment, deportations, etc. The British Indian rulers discriminated against Indians in matters of their political and civil liberties and rights. The legislatures, executive and the judiciary were oriented to protect and promote the interests of the British. The then justice system was also in favor of well-to-do, that there were drastic differences of justice availability in between landlord and peasants, rich and poor, master and servant. Indians were reduced to low citizens and treated in different manners. To these were added the exploitations of material resources and its wealth. All the systems and existence were managed for the betterment of the British. The craftsmen were destroyed and rendered jobless by the influx of the British manufactured goods. The Indian soldiers as well as people in administration could not rise in hierarchy, as the senior jobs were reserved for the Europeans. By experiencing the First World War, Indian leaders had achieved a new consciousness of their Indianness and of the needs of the people for the right of self-determination. Gandhiji's arrival on the political scene of India also added to it. Subsequent impact of the movement and the outcome. It was because of stiff opposition from Indian people. The Charter Act of 1813 was enacted with a view to promote the interests of the native inhabitants in India. Similarly, the Government of India Act 1883 was passed to allow the Indians to enjoy some political rights. It was the first act by which no discrimination was shown to any person on the grounds of religion, caste, place of birth, descent, color. It is true, the first ever demand for fundamental rights found place in the Constitution of India Bill 1895, prepared by Indian National Congress and also known as Home Rule document. The bill envisages for India a constitution guaranteeing to every citizen basic human rights like freedom of expression, inviolability of one's home, right to equality before law, right to property, right to personal liberty, and the right to free education. For instance, the Government of India Act 1915, in pursuance of the demands for fundamental rights, guaranteed equality of opportunity in the public service regardless of race or religion. A series of Congress resolutions adopted between 1917 and 1919 repeated and demanded for civil rights and equality of status with Englishmen. Indeed, the issue of equality was deep concern of all the leaders of the freedom movement. There was a widespread unrest in the country as Rowlatt Act was passed in 1919, which empowered the government to put people in jail without trial. By increasing Indianness and the conscience of self-determination and the experience of the First World War, the demand for civil and political rights was in new spectrum and developed progressively. Civil and political rights in constitution making. It was a kind of constitution which proposed to guarantee basic human rights to all citizens. Indian National Congress finalized a draft of Commonwealth of India Bill in 1925, embodying a Declaration of Rights. The demand was also repeated by Motilal Nehru Committee Report 1928. The report demanded different civil and political rights based on Commonwealth of India Bill and within the framework of fundamental rights. The first concern of the people of India was to secure fundamental rights, of which some relevant civil and political rights may be mentioned. In the context of this analysis, they are as follows: personal liberty, inviolability of dwelling place and property, freedom of conscience and of profession and the practice of religion subject to public order and morality, right of free expression of opinion and to assemble peaceably and to form associations and the union subject to public order and morality, equality for all citizens before the law and in civil rights, non-discrimination against any persons on grounds of religion, caste or creed in the matter of public employment, equality of rights to all citizens in the matter of access to and use of public roads, wells and other places of public resort, equality of rights to men and women as citizens. Unfortunately, Nehru report was rejected by the Simon Commission, but the Karachi session of Congress in 1931 adopted a detailed program on fundamental rights and emphasized that fundamental rights should be included in the Government of India Act 1935. But the same act was passed without considering any cause for civil and political rights. The Indian National Congress reiterated the issue of civil and political rights under the chairmanship of Tej Bahadur Sapro. All these ultimately led to the establishment of Constituent Assembly to make the Constitution for India by incorporating different civil and political rights under the fundamental rights. Conclusion: since a long time, demand for civil and political rights had been incorporated in the Indian freedom movement. In various stages of struggle, the response of the authority was against the aspirations of the people. Various national and international agreements were taken and ultimately a Court of Human Rights was evolved. Thus, Constituent Assembly successfully incorporated the aspirations of the people, where Indian National Congress moved different civil and political rights during the freedom movement. Founding fathers of the Constitution have made Indian Constitution a viable instrument for the Indian people's salvation with a zeal to secure all persons basic human rights in the light of philosophy envisaged in various bills of rights. A deep sight into Indian Constitution reflects that it has created two broad categories of human rights: civil and political rights and economic and social rights. At that time, newly elected Labour government in Britain in 1945 announced their support for providing civil and political rights in India, and also sent cabinet mission to India for resolving various issues. During the framing of Indian Constitution, many provisions relating to justiciable rights were inserted in the fundamental rights, which are mostly civil and political rights. Thank you.